podcast where we talk about pop culture and life and how they kind of mesh into each other. Today I'm joined by my good friend Mr. Sean from Indiana.
I guess we're doing this, aren't we?
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Captioned Life, a podcast about how comics and pop culture impact life and society, and vice versa. Coming to you from the deluxe accommodations of the La Quinta Inn off I-70 in Plainfield, Indiana. We're together for the first time. We're recording together for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm Kevin, and this is my GBF Sean, my giant best friend.
Hello, everyone.
And as you may have noticed, we're letting my son Madden join us for this very special episode of the podcast. We flew in yesterday, and last night we got a chance to to go see Black Widow. So today we're going to be talking about Black Widow. Before we get started on this episode, though, please hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and follow us on social media at Captioned Life on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. And you can find out more info and past episodes at thecaptionedlife.com.
So, I mean, since we're talking about Black Widow and, just came out last night, just a spoiler alert for everybody. So if you haven't seen Black Widow yet, put this on pause, save it, download it for later, go watch it, and then come back, because we definitely will be talking about the movie and be spoiling it for you if you haven't watched it
and
yet.
The great thing is it is available on like Disney Premiere Plus, right? So that you can
Premiere Access.
You can pay the extra $30 and order it on Disney Plus.
Yep.
We paid a little bit more than that because we went and saw it in IMAX.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, so it was pretty
flew
dope.
into Indianapolis for us, so it ended up being like a $300 movie.
The most expensive movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Right.
So we'll get started with first impressions, and we'll just go from there. So Sean, I always let you go first. So why don't you tell us what you thought, and then we'll let Madden go after that.
Yeah, so this is the first movie that kicks off Phase 4 of MCU, and first Marvel movie we've had since Spider-Man Far From Home, right? And I think everyone was really hyped up for it, and it had a lot of expectations that everybody had. And for me, I thought it was good. But I thought there was still something like kind of missing from it, because I feel like it was one of those movies that had like all the check boxes that makes up a good movie, but I feel like it was still kind of lacking a little bit. And I don't know what it is. I think it's just more because we haven't had a Black Widow movie, even though she's been in so many other movies before, that I think everybody was hoping that this would be a really great movie. And I thought it was good. I don't think it was great, and I think it could have been better. Okay. I think all the performance was really good. I thought David Harbour did a great job as Red Guardian. Scarlett Johansson always does a great job as Black Widow, and Rachel Weisz did a great job as Melina. I gotta say, though, Florence Pugh...
Yeah,
scene stealer.
Yeah. I mean, the character written was written really well, but I thought she did a great performance of that character as well too. Because I really found myself like gravitating more towards her character than Black Widow, because I think her character had a lot of depth in terms of humor and emotions and drama, and you just really connected with that character. And I think Florence Pugh just did a great job of emulating that in the movie itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think the movie was good. I think it could have been better, but I don't know what they could have done to make it better. But I'm actually really excited about seeing Florence Pugh playing.
That's right. They did set it up for her to kind of continue the character without giving too much away.
Right. Yeah.
Madam, what did you think of the movie?
I'm kind of with Mr. Sean. I thought it was really good. Everyone did a really great job of bringing their characters to life. As Melina said, they played their parts to perfection. What?
It's okay.
But there was a couple things that I think that they probably could have done a little better, and overall it was a pretty great movie. But there was a couple times where I was a little skeptical of a couple things, like.
Okay, I will agree with that.
We'll talk about that later, right?
I think I'm a little bit more on the great side of good than you guys are. I really liked it, and the more I've let it process, the more I realized I really enjoyed it. But I think for me too, one of the things that I really liked about it was the performances, all the characters. there's just some really good performances out of like the main cast. The story, their backstory that they tell with how they were family and everything, that all that stuff was like, it was really, really well done. But I think you're right. There was something missing from it. And I know that you talked about all the characters. I want to double back to Rachel Weisz, who plays Melina in the movie. Like Rachel Weisz was in The Mummy, like over like 20 years ago in 1999, and it doesn't seem like she's aged much at all. Like she's a great actress. She's a beautiful woman, but she seems to be like able to defy like the aging that catches up. I know that I look a lot different over the last 20 years. I finally look like a grown up, but.
Well, and the fact that she can play like a really action hero,
right? And they didn't like, you're the older Black Widow, so we're going to kind of put you to the sideline. She was still like a total badass.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those, like, she's a seasoned warrior, but not one of those, not like like an old man Logan type of thing, right? It's more of like she is still top of the line, even though she's older, and people typically think that the younger ones are better because she's older. She's actually much better than anybody else. And I thought they did a great job of doing that. So
the character development was great, with the exception of the villain. And I think the villains a lot of times are throwaways in these films, unless it's something that they set up so that they're building to. Obviously, Loki became something greater in the MCU, and Thanos, like I don't know that there's ever been a better, like, at least a superhero movie villain than Thanos, because like you watch those two films where he's essentially I almost think in Infinity War he's the main character.
He definitely is.
But and lesser so in Endgame, but you watch the performance that Josh Brolin puts out on Thanos in those movies, and you forget that he's a motion cap character. He seems like a real person. Like if you saw him on the street, you'd be like, I hate your guts.
Yeah.
But this villain is Dracoff.
Dracoff.
Yeah. So like, and that's mentioned in earlier films. Loki mentions that in Avengers about Dracoff's daughter, which plays a big part in this film. But yeah, the villain was kind of hokey, kind of cheesy, and I think the real conflict of the film was less about the resolution of killing the villain or whatever, and more about like the family dynamic, the family drama,
right?
And that'll segue into like the next thing that I wanted to talk about was that it's a much different kind of movie for Marvel. It seemed very different to me, because to me I feel like this is Marvel's first drama movie that they just pumped full of action. Like it started out as it's a much smaller scale than the Infinity War, the previous things that have come in game that have come between us. But Black Widow doesn't have any powers. There's Red Guardian is the only person in the film that seems to have like any like super ability, and he's not all that super.
He's pretty much like, I don't want to say the worst version of Captain America, but he's more of the self-indulgence version.
Yeah, he's like the
self-involved.
Yeah. He's
his image. He pays attention more about his image than Captain America does.
And spoiler alert, he talks a lot about like fighting Captain America back in his heyday, and it's pointed out to him that like back in his heyday, Captain America was on ice. So it makes you wonder, like, did he tangle with like Isaiah Bradley or something,
or another Captain America version that we don't know about, or we know that we're going to have a Skrull invasion if something like that happened, because that's been kept under wraps. Yeah,
the comics and the MCU is doing this too. They are playing the shell game with the timeline and be like, you were looking over here, but all this actual movie takes place right after the events of Civil War. Yeah,
right.
And we watched Civil War on the plane over, and it was a good place to like jump off from.
Right.
But while the stuff is over here going on, this is what was happening in between. It's kind of like when they do a big crossover event, you can read the main crossover book, but then there's like, this is what's going on with the X-Men at the time, and this is what's going on with this character at the time.
Right.
And so that's kind of the way this fits in.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I wanted to point out is, and I think they did a really good job of this because of that she doesn't have superpowers. Mm-hmm. They also made the stakes much lower. Like Black Widow's not saving the world in this film.
Right.
She's got a mission.
Right.
But she's not saving the world. And
well, at least not indirectly. Like that wasn't her intent, but then she finds out she kind of is.
Well, I mean, she rids the world of a pretty nasty villain, but like this is what I'm comparing it to.
Right.
I think DC needs to figure out a better way to do Suicide Squad movies, or lots of movies like this that are this nature, where there's people who are woefully undermanned at like trying to save the world.
Right.
Like if this was in Suicide Squad, the first one, it's like this godlike creature and like all these blob monsters and whatnot. Like you got all these people available to you, and this is the people you call. Like this is it just the stakes are often too high.
Right.
And I like the fact that this was the fact that she does end up, I guess, saving the world is only revealed at the end. Like this threat was greater than it was.
Yeah, I mean, which is kind of like how it was with Winter Soldier and the reveal of Hydra and all that. But yeah, I think going back to talking about how this is the first drama, I think you hit a good point in that going into the movie. I think one of the things that I kind of struggled with is that after watching the movie, I felt like it didn't really do a whole lot to move the MCU forward necessarily. But if I just saw it as a Black Widow movie, I think it was really good, because if I took the MCU family out of the equation, or the MCU world out of the equation, and just look at it as a Black Widow movie that exists within the MCU, but not like necessarily part of the story, like the overall story, then I think it was a really good movie. I think you're right in that it was definitely more drama based, and it definitely had that feel from the beginning. So like beginning of every Avengers or MCU film has kind of a jacked up experience where you kind of get you hyped up when the credits roll. And for this one, it didn't really have that. It's kind of have like a more of a serious tone to it.
They went full Pixar on this,
they did,
yeah. Because it was sad in the beginning, like the backstory of the family.
The Smells Like Teen Spirit, like
that's super somber, depressing score. Yeah.
Which, I mean, when you hear it in that version, like the original version does not give you that feeling at all. But when you hear the same words in that kind of style of music, like it definitely gives you a different experience with that. But,
yeah, they set the tone for like the personal emotional anguish that these characters experience,
right?
And
especially Yelena,
and continue to experience like through adulthood until they're able to break free from it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think it really definitely like it goes to the it's going in through the eyes of Black Widow, but definitely sets it up more for Yelena, and like I really think that Yelena is the one they end up focusing on at the end, because she's the one that seems to be impacted by all this the most. But I agree with Taskmaster in that I think one of the issues I have with this movie overall is that a lot of it ended up being predictable.
Yes.
And that I think it's just a challenge for Marvel that they're going to have is how are they going to come up with new stories and new movies that's going to have a different formula that's still going to be exciting for people.
Yeah,
Because with Taskmaster, again, this is going to be a spoiler alert, is I know you said you knew who Taskmaster was, like actress-wise.
Yeah,
because
so
of
the credits. There was an actress mentioned at the beginning credits of the film that hadn't been mentioned in any of the promotional stuff.
And still not on IMDb either. I looked it up this morning.
Okay, yeah.
She's not on IMDb.
They're trying to keep it a secret. But
probably, yeah.
So that actress is a fairly famous Russian actress.
Right.
And she shows up in the credits, and about 20, 30 minutes in, once we get more of the backstory, I started to realize, okay, that's who it is,
Right.
Under the mask. Now Madden was the person who leaned over and whispered to me like that, that he thought Taskmaster was actually a woman. So why don't you tell us like what you were thinking?
So, in the comics, Taskmaster is a man named Tony Masters who takes a super soldier serum that kind of just gives him the power to like mirror other people's abilities. And I kind of thought that what was going to happen is that in the end of Civil War, when Iron Man and Captain America are fighting, Iron Man has to use like a software to kind of like read Captain America's like patterns and like to beat him because he's just knocking him down. And what I thought was gonna happen is that like somehow Red Room was gonna like get their hands on that technology, and it kind of seems like they did.
Yeah, because there's a scene where it seems like
there's
she's
a scene
analyzing...
where you see from the inside of Taskmaster's visor,
Right.
Like she's analyzing like different heroes' fight patterns,
Right.
And from the beginning, a lot of like the fandoms and like groups that I'm part of that I follow on the internet would often speculate that Rachel Weisz, who was going to like actually be Taskmaster, Melina, and then we realized that she's just Black Widow's
she's her mom,
adoptive mother,
Right.
and it kind of plays out to where if they didn't mention Dreykov's daughter, then like if they mentioned Dreykov's daughter, it had to be for a reason. They're not just gonna like make that point and then be like, well, nothing happened with that kid.
Right.
Yeah, but they telegraphed it. They
They did big time.
Yeah,
well, especially
times.
when you know the story of Black Widow, where she talks about how she has red in her ledger, and that was obviously a big part of the ledger. So the story, again, spoiler, is that you find out in order for Black Widow to defect from Russia, she had to help kill Dreykov, and in order for her to confirm Dreykov was in his office so they can blow it up, is that his daughter had to go up, and so she essentially was confirming, her death, basically. And so that was going to be kind of a redemption story, is figuring that out. And at that point, when I saw that story happening, I was like, okay, that person's Taskmaster. Like, that's how they're going to bring it back. And so for me, like, I think that was one of the struggles, that this was a good movie, but what I struggled with it is that it had a predictable pattern.
I was hoping that Taskmaster was either like a clone of Steve Rogers or like Bucky Barnes or something like that. I was hoping that they were a character that we hadn't been introduced. I mean, it was a character that we hadn't been introduced to yet, but I was hoping it was like something. Oh my gosh, that this other thing is out there, and it wasn't. And the way they told the story, they telegraphed who it was, so the reveal wasn't like super shocking,
right?
And that was a bit. I will say that's probably the thing that I was let down the most from in the film. All the rest of it I thought was pretty good, but that was the part that I was let down the most by.
See, I think you and I had this conversation. I think for me, I was okay with how they treated Taskmaster, because in the comics, at least, like, he was always kind of a B-level villain. Yeah, he wasn't like a major villain like the other ones.
I love the fact that Taskmaster comes from like the era of comics where like his name is Tony Masters, and his and his secret identity is Taskmaster. Like, are you really you're wearing the mask, but you're kind of giving your identity.
It's the equivalent of Clark Kent wearing glasses, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe the best way they could have done it is for the masks to never come off. And them to just keep, like, Taskmaster dies and you never know who it was. That would have maybe, like, I don't know. And that could lead to Taskmaster showing up, because in all of the media, like he's in Spider-Man, he's in Avengers, like he's like the first villain in the Avengers video game, and he shows up numerous times in the Spider-Man video game. He is a character that has like different people that he can like battle or like fight against, and they kind of like symbolize that was all kind of ending, like, and you barely got to know the character.
Well, I think that they're going to bring the character back in some way, shape, or form, because she didn't die.
Right.
And but with all the Black Widows like essentially being free from mind control. Once again, spoiler alert.
Right.
That
we'll spoil it for you, then we'll give you the alert.
that they'll figure out something to do with maybe like a redemptive arc. They've got so many different ways to do that now with like the television shows,
right?
And with movies and things like that.
Yeah.
They have so looks like they have so many, like normally you would play like poker with a hand of like 5 cards.
Right.
It feels like Marvel is sitting at the table and they've got like 26 cards. They've got half the deck in their hands, and they can literally do whatever they want to do.
Right.
Like Black Widow's not the showstopper that like Endgame was, but it's also, remember, like, we're a year removed from when it was actually supposed to come out. And it was supposed to, and it's going to keep leading into bigger and better things. I have a sneaking suspicion that Shang-Chi is also going to be a smaller scale, like, kind of thing. I mean, there's obviously from the trailer you can see big set pieces and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
but it's gonna. They're back to the beginning where they're building they're developing characters and backstories and whatnot for the future, and they're just laying the groundwork.
Yeah,
and you look back at like Thor 1, the first Thor movie. The biggest fight was just a one-on-one. Was just the one-on-one between him and the Destroyer, kind of at the end, or him and Loki. It was way scaled down, and I think that was at the time because of budget and not knowing what was going to happen.
Right.
And
no one knew who Chris Hemsworth or Tom Hiddleston was at the time.
So it was unproven. They couldn't throw $200 million at this movie and have all these extravagant things happen. If there was a risk that the movie wasn't going to make its money back.
Right.
Like, don't get me wrong, Black Widow is a big budget film, and it's probably, because she doesn't have any powers, it's probably one of the actually more violent MCU films in my opinion. There's a lot of stabbing, a lot of hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
And it's not glossed over. Like my daughter is 6 and she would really love to watch the Black Widow movie because she's a big fan of Marvel and all the superheroes and everything.
Right.
But this would be the one that I would have the most hesitation about, like, letting her watch, because some of the fight and the combat is very visceral, and you have to. And another thing to remember is that both the protagonists and many of the antagonists are female, and so it's to me it's very different seeing like women being like treated this way. Like there's some deeper stuff there, like with the mind control of women and things like that.
Right.
So I would definitely want to wait to let her be a little bit older before she watched something like that, because there's some deeper and kind of intense stuff in it.
Right. Yeah. I think. I don't think it was that much violent, but there's a couple scenes that I would agree with you on with that, where the one Black Widow was forced to terminate herself. Like that would definitely be a little bit jarring for Caroline or Riley, for our kids at that age. So I would be the same way with that. I don't think it's that much violent though, compared to like when you think about Captain America movies and even the Thor Ragnarok movie, like when he goes hand-to-hand combat with Hela, like you see his eye get sliced out. And and again, both movies, Black Widow and Thor Ragnarok, they didn't have gore where you saw blood or anything that. But I mean, I think that same level of violence is in there. But I think you're right, is the fact that because Black Widow's superpower is just being really skilled and highly trained assassin, that there wasn't any sort of graphic, when I say graphic, like like CGI or any of the sparkly stuff that you can really shiny things
you can cover the violence with.
Right.
Even like when Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans as the Thor and Captain America, even when they kick somebody, they're so super powered that they kick somebody and that person flies up against the wall, falls down, and is probably unconscious.
Right.
Like in reality,
they'd be dead.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like that's a critical blow.
Right.
And so there's not as much of that. I mean, there's some of that in this movie because Red Guardian has powers. Taskmaster is juiced up on something.
Right.
But there's not as much of that. So there's a lot of punches that land. And And I think one of the ways you can tell a movie is good, or if the way I felt kind of not queasy, but a little bit iffy on the violence of it, is the sound mixing. Like
Right.
when you hear those punches land
Yeah.
in a certain way, man, it's to me it was a little bit jarring.
Right.
So
Oh yeah.
I didn't think it was that bad. There was definitely some scenes where blood was visible. Like there's a scene where Yelena gets injured and has blood all over her hand, and there's even like a part where Taskmaster literally tracks her by like looking at the spills of blood.
yeah,
Right.
And
some of that was
Yeah, but that's different than actually seeing it exiting out of the body, which is a little bit more traumatic.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
one of the things I will say they get high marks on. I want to make 2 points, and I'll throw it to you guys. Is the Marvel actually came out, I think, earlier in the week, because it was brought up about the film, but they kind of made a vow to not sexualize the female characters anymore.
Right.
In Black Widow 2, in Iron Man 2, she is very much like kind of on display as
She's the eye candy.
she is the eye candy. There's
Yeah.
even a scene of her like changing her clothes in the back seat of the car.
Right.
like Happy Hogan like tries to see her from the rear view mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. It was,
And side note, I don't know if there's ever been like in my memory like when somebody on screen looks as beautiful as she did in that movie. Like she's just like she was just, I don't know, like when I saw that the first time I was like, man, she's beautiful.
Right.
Just like I had like a little crush on her at the time. But so they've made a vow not to sexualize the characters, and they didn't in this movie. There's a scene where you see Natasha's bare back, but it's more to see the impact of the beating that she
Right.
just took.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing, a good way for them to approach, like, you know, if we're going to put male and female characters on the same level, I think that's a good approach. Now, will they stop making Chris Hemsworth take his shirt off?
If
Not at all.
they stop the sexualizing and objectifying the female characters, but they're just gonna let Chris Hemsworth walk around all.
Well, I saw an interview with the director of Thor 1, Kenneth Branagh, earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And he was like, do we really need like this other shirtless scene? And Chris Hemsworth was like, man, I've been working my ass off for 6 months to look like this. Yeah, I'm taking my shirt off. So,
Right.
I mean, it's a double standard, and it's an unfair double standard for the most part.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think it's one of those things where I don't feel uncomfortable with that happening at all necessarily, just because it is different for men than it is for women. You know, like, because women, when they're objectified, they can also be victimized, whereas men, not that it doesn't happen, but it's not to the same extent, right? And so that's why I think, you know, that's part still going to happen. But I will say this, but going back to not sexualizing Black Widow, I'm going to disagree just a little bit, because I don't think they did it directly, I don't think it was obvious that they did it, but I think there were subtle hints that they did it, that it wasn't the focus, but they kind of snuck it in there. So there's a couple scenes where you saw Black Widow and Natasha, Yelena walking away, but the way they angle the camera is that you still have like their butts in view.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and it
What are you doing looking at butts, man?
It was literally like
It was on the IMAX. I couldn't
It
help
did take up half the screen, and that is on IMAX. That is large. Like
that's a big old booty.
but like it the camera just starts kind of it's not, I'm not gonna say zoomed, but in close proximity, and then it kind of
right.
But
And they're trying to frame it.
yeah,
but
there were several scenes where it kind of felt like they were. I'm not gonna necessarily say recording their butts, but there were scenes where their butts were very prominent.
Right.
Okay.
They could have gone a different a different angle, you know.
This is just
You know, I would take my shirt off for our podcast videos, but I'm afraid of being objectified on the internet. I don't want to be an object of lust for.
I don't think there would be any issue with that.
wow.
Speak for yourself, Sean.
I mean, when it's a podcast, you could go shirtless all you want, right?
That's true. Welcome to the Captioned Life After Dark.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, last thing I want to talk about was the best running gag in the film is about the posing. Yelena like calls Black Widow out for like every time. Why do you do the superhero landing with the fist?
What is that? You do the hair flip.
And so
like you know people are watching you. You do that. There's no reason for you to do that.
So there's and then it happens several times again, and even Yelena like does it at one point and then shakes it off. It's like, oh, disgusting.
Yeah.
My Yelena like smokes 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Like, oh my gosh, I've been living in Russia for so long.
Yelena Belova, I kind of do a Russian accent that is slightly better than yours.
Okay.
He just showed you up, man.
First and last time that Madden gets to sit in with this thing.
What do you mean the first? I've like been on here like I'm an honorary member.
Well, you kind of insert yourself like the last episode.
Junior
you just
intern.
busted in the door.
When we go to Comic-Con, we should have a shirt that just says intern, Captioned Life intern.
Yeah. Let's do it. I'm good with that. Get that for the kids, right?
Yeah. Just all of them just say intern.
Yeah.
And Madden's gonna be like, when are you guys gonna promote me to the show? It's like, I'm a sophomore in college now, Dad. It's been 10 years.
He's been working for your approval all this
Right.
time. I mean, accept me for who I am and how much I love you and your show.
He's only on the episode today because my wife wouldn't let me come on this trip without him.
Don't leave.
That's not true. That's not true. When I found out we had the opportunity to do this, I thought it would be really great for us to both to come. And I know that he likes to participate in the discussions when he can. So he always brings a unique and different perspective to the conversation, and we like having him.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So anybody got any final thoughts on the Black Widow movie?
Talking about it with y'all kind of brings my my rank of it up. It was definitely a good movie. It was a good like film. Like it had like a great story and like great performance and something that we don't usually think about is that like these are stories. Like they're not just like, oh, action here, action there. Like this had a really great story, and that's something that I think that some of other Marvel movies have kind of like dropped the.
They sacrifice story for the action.
Yeah,
right.
Like Transformers movies.
Like, okay, well, I'm gonna bring up. I know y'all are gonna disagree with me, but like Spider-Man: Far From Home is like a huge blockbuster film. But when it comes to like story, like there's a lot of parts where like it kind of just seems like the characters are just like, all right, let's keep moving. We gotta get the story. We gotta get this movie done. 2 hours 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of I really liked the way that they could take their time and like.
Yeah, it does happen very organically. I'll agree with that.
Yeah,
it's not forced. It's not rushed in any way.
And I think that might be like my favorite part of like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is because they have times to like make the shots last like.
Oh yeah,
because they're like 50-minute episodes.
And they developed the story really well. Like the action was in there, but it was a very small part of it. Like they really developed. I mean, and I agree with you. That's my favorite show that they have, like of all the ones that developed, because I think they did a great job with that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with you there. I think that Falcon Winter Soldier is a really great, really like it is like a good like piece of art, and
it is.
All of their performers performed their parts to perfection.
Are you upset that we didn't let you join us for that episode?
But I helped you write your points on it.
That's true.
I really wanted him to talk about Wyatt Russell, but they didn't.
Oh no, yeah, we forgot to talk about him. You're right. I will say with Black Widow, I can see why watching this it was supposed to be the kickoff to Phase 4 of the MCU, because it wasn't like Iron Man or anything else where it kind of sets up what's going to happen for Phase 4 or for the future of the MCU necessarily, but it was a good transition story to kind of resolve Black Widow's story and then to introduce Yelena as kind of the new Black Widow or whatever moniker she's going to go under. But then it does at the end credit scene introduce kind of a conflict and Valentina, which we've seen her before, but we weren't supposed to see her in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
It made me wonder, did they go back and redo
That's what
that?
I was thinking.
Yeah. I don't know.
think that the Valentina showing up at the end only is like so good because of the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
I think that knowing her in the present and then meeting her in the past was a really
Like
great
they
way
may
to
have
do it.
had a similar scene planned at the end before and shot,
Right.
but when Falcon and Winter Soldier and came first,
Right.
they went back and modified it maybe.
Yeah,
because
they may have,
because
yeah.
the character is already introduced. Like when you see her at the end of the film,
Right.
you know who she is already,
Right.
and you know that we don't know her intentions. Like we don't know if she's a good guy. We don't know if she's a bad guy.
Yeah, we still have no
She
idea.
seems pretty shady.
Right.
But
Especially with what she's trying to do. But again,
Yes.
you don't know why she's doing
Yeah.
it, or if that's like a small piece to a bigger plan that she has too.
like
so.
she could just be like really opposed to the Sokovian Accords and looking to form a clandestine group of Avengers.
Vigilantes?
Yeah. So
The Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
maybe. Who knows?
not Madden
Like I said, they've got so many different cards they can play
I know.
at this point that who knows where it'll take us. But it was a great way to kick off Phase 4. I know there was a lot of applause at the beginning and the end of the film, like in the theater that we saw it, because people were glad to
yeah.
be back, and we were glad to be back. We were glad to go watch it together.
Yes.
Podcast listeners, when the movie started, my dad said, "We're back, baby!"
He did.
Yeah, I get excited.
Were you embarrassed by him, Madden, when he did that?
No.
It was dark.
Oh, no.
It was dark in there. Nobody was gonna see his face.
People didn't know where it was coming from.
I'm kind of like in a state where like I don't get embarrassed by dad anymore just because I've gotten embarrassed by him so many times.
He's
like
like the
resting
Hulk. No,
state.
he's like the Hulk. He's like, you want to know my secret? I'm embarrassed all the time.
Just used to that by now.
Yeah, it's the resting state. Like when dad doesn't do something embarrassing, it's like, wow, dad. And
Showed real maturity in that, Dad. I'm proud of you.
The tables have turned.
Hey, but that's going to wrap up another episode of The Captioned Life. We hope you enjoyed listening to this one. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on whatever major podcast platform you listen to us on. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Captioned Life. And if you like what we're doing, give us a shout out, tag us in your posts. For more info about us and all of the previous episodes, you can visit us at thecaptionedlife.com. Until next time, hey, go see Black Widow.
Yeah, do it.